It's July 29th, 1945, and Soviet General Ivan Konev unveils a new monument in Prague. Within Kinsky Square, sitting atop a 5-meter, 16.5-foot tall platform, was a Soviet IS-2 heavy tank in honor of the tankers of the Red Army who had pushed out the German occupation just a few months prior. Within a few years, it would become enshrined as a national cultural monument following the communist takeover of Czechoslovakia, with the square itself renamed to the Square of Soviet Tank Crews. However, this reverence towards the monument would begin to crumble in the following decades, resulting in quite an interesting tale. Join me today as we discuss the story of the pink IS-2 and other cases of pink tanks from around the world. Pink is not exactly the first color that comes to mind when you think of tanks, and for good reason. With few exceptions, such as parades, tanks are almost exclusively painted in colors or patterns that will help reduce the likelihood of being spotted by the enemy. Unless that environment happens to be located within a Barbie dream house or field of flowers, though, pink is normally far from the best option. While you likely clicked on this video for the story behind the most famous pink tank, that being the IS-2, fitted with a slightly phallic middle finger on its roof I mentioned in the intro, there are actually many different examples of these which have popped up over the years. One of the first instances of this I can find occurred here in the United States during the late 60s at the Pennsylvania Military College. In October of 1967, students led by Roy Eaton would commence an operation to paint several different locations around the school's campus, with one of those being a 76mm cast hull Sherman, which was given a coat of bright pink paint. While this was nothing more than a harmless prank played by students, it would closely mirror another event in Prague over 20 years later, which had a far different motive. Before we discuss that though, let's discuss the backstory of the vehicle involved. The IS-2, which would eventually receive a coat of pink paint, was originally placed as part of a monument to Soviet soldiers involved in the liberation of Prague during the Second World War. However, the vehicles involved in that operation were actually T-34s rather than Stalins. These vehicles clashed with German Jagdpanzer 38T tank destroyers, a topic we have actually recently covered on the channel, resulting in the death of Ukrainian commander Ivan Goncharenko of tank number 24, and seemingly the destruction of the vehicle itself. Though this was the lead vehicle, following his death, T-34 number 23 would be the first to enter the square, which is where the number 23 on the IS-2 turret came from. Interestingly, while initially many believed that the entire crew was killed, this would later be proven false, with just the commander suffering fatal injuries. Why exactly the IS-2 was chosen for this rather than one of the readily available T-34s in the Soviet inventory is unclear. It's possible this was done due to the more imposing look of the IS-2, somewhat supported by the claims that the commander of the unit who had entered the city said, "We won't give the Czechs such junk," regarding the wreck of the real tank. While that does answer why they didn't use the original T-34, it still doesn't answer why an entirely different type of vehicle was used in its place. Regardless of the vehicle on top of it, this monument would stand for the better part of half a century following its erection in 1945, but that is not to say it would remain an uncontroversial one. Sentiment towards this war memorial would shift dramatically in the years following its creation, and especially after the events of 1968 and the Velvet Revolution in 1989. Now, the icon, which was intended to represent the fall of the Nazis, was being viewed by many as a symbol of the similarly totalitarian regime they had been living under. Debate over the possible removal of the tank and monument began, and while many were opposed to the idea of its removal, given the treatment of the nation by the Soviets, it shouldn't be much of a surprise that it became a heated topic. This bubbling tension towards the monument finally reached a boiling point in April of 1991. Just like the pink Sherman, this would occur at the hands of students following then 23-year-old David Cherny, who sneakily repainted the vehicle during the night, as well as attaching a large middle finger to the tank's cupola. While this can still be largely viewed as a harmless prank, given both the political nature of the statement and the time period in which it was done, it should come as no surprise that David was arrested for this vandalism. The tank would briefly return to its green color following this, however, another group would revert this change again, repainting it to the bright pink color. Unlike the previous group of students, though, this was done by members of the Federal Assembly using their diplomatic immunity to avoid criminal charges. Both of these events understandably angered the Soviets, but following the second coat of pink paint, the IS-2 would remain in that color. The charges against David would eventually be decreased from a disorderly conduct to a misdemeanor, with him ordered to pay 1,121 crowns for the damage. The tank would not receive such a light sentence though, with it being removed from the monument on June 13, 1991. Thankfully, this would not result in the scrapping of the tank, with it being moved to an aviation museum before finding a new home at the Military Technical Museum Lesheny, still sporting a pink paint job. This was still not the end of the story for the pink IS-2 and David, however, with both being brought back together a final time in June of 2011 as part of Freedom Week. Featuring a new finger atop the cupola and a fresh coat of pink paint, the tank was transported by truck and then placed on a floating platform in the river, where it remained until the 1st of July 2011. Following this, the tank was placed back on display, still in the color which has made it famous to many around the world. Interestingly, this would not be David's only pink tank escapade, with a similar art project in 2001 being made using a part of a T-34 hull painted pink with a white invasion stripe. Originally, this was to be placed in the same square as the original monument, although pushback resulted in this being rejected. Clearly not one to ask for permission, David would install it anyways in 2008, where it would remain for a brief period before being moved to Meat Factory in Smychov, a non-profit focusing on art founded by David. Eventually, it would return to Kinsky Square without the pink paint scheme, although it would later be repainted to the colors of the Ukrainian flag in 2022, and still remains there today, with Google Maps showing it having returned to pink with what looks to be various doodles on it. If you live in the area and have more to add about these pink tanks or personal experiences regarding them, please drop them in the comments. Those of you from the Czech Republic may also be familiar with one of David's more recent art pieces, consisting of some giant Spitfire-shaped butterflies in Prague. Although our visit to Prague is now at an end, we aren't done with our stories of pink tanks, so let's go over a few other examples of this phenomenon. Interestingly, the next tank we look at today is yet another Soviet vehicle, which is rumored to also be connected to the 1968 invasion of Czechoslovakia. Nicknamed Stompie, this tank was purchased by a businessman named Russell Gray in London. There is a lot more to the story behind this vehicle, but I'll save that for a video of its own. While the tank has been painted in a variety of patterns and colors over the years, it was painted pink at least once, as shown by this photo taken in 2002. Another pair of T-3485 war memorials in Poland have similarly received coats of pink paint. Poland appears to be a hotspot for this phenomenon, with yet another earlier production T-34 also being struck by the pink paint plague. The use of the pink tank as a statement or symbol for various causes has continued, with groups such as the Pink Tank Project, started by the Minnesota National Guard for breast cancer awareness.
We are breast cancer warriors, members of the Pink Tank Project.
There isn't much information about this online though, and it appears to me that the M47 shown in the articles and video is likely not painted, but rather has been edited to appear pink in the photo. To find a real pink M47, a quick hop across the Atlantic to Germany finds one which was transported from Delmenhorst to the German Tank Museum in Münster in 2020. In another case, an M24 Chaffee in Denmark was covered in a knitted pink sweater of sorts as an anti-war protest. One BMP in Russia would be the victim of another prank, with it being reportedly painted pink by teenagers in Bratsk. A second pink BMP-1 would hit the internet, appearing in Stockholm, Sweden several years ago, seemingly linked to the pink IS-2. I haven't been able to find much about this online, with photos seeming to show it being directly linked as a memorial commemoration of sorts to the IS-2 and a discussion of democracy. However, I've also seen claims it was done as part of a gay pride demonstration, with it being painted by David Cherny. I'm not sure of any truth to that, and it may be confusion caused by this pink FV433 Abbot owned by Tanks-A-Lot in the UK, which was featured in a London Pride parade, as well as advertising a shopping center. Yet another appearance of a pink tank occurred in the United States in 2012 with a pair of M60s. According to an article, one of these was painted hot pink and the other a light purple, although they both look the same color to me. Sadly, the reason for the paint on this ill-fated pair is to assist in their use as range targets in Fort Sill. I have to give whoever was in charge of painting them credit though, because despite the fact these will just be shot to pieces, they appear to have taken the time to avoid spraying paint on both the rubber of the road wheels and the tracks. While it's debatable whether or not you can consider this to be a pink tank, I just know if I didn't include it, it's all I would hear about in the comments. This brownish-pink Panzer IV is actually a full-size replica built by New Zealand's Weta Workshop, who have worked on and built props for a wide variety of movies, such as Spectral, which we've discussed on this channel before, along with other niche projects such as The Lord of the Rings. This particular prop was built for the 2015 release of Girls und Panzer der Film, along with a group cosplaying the characters from the show. This replica has since made appearances at various events and is just one of many reproductions made by or for fans of the series. This pink paint job is not exclusive to tanks either, with other monuments such as the Red Army Monument in Bulgaria being similarly vandalized with pink paint in 2013, along with text reading, "Bulgaria apologizes." This is not the first case of this particular monument being painted over either, with the soldiers being painted as a somewhat strange spread of characters. These included comic book heroes like Superman, Wolverine, and Captain America, but for some reason also included the Joker, Santa, and Ronald McDonald. So what do you think of the stories of these various pink tanks? Let me know down in the comments, and let me know if I missed any, as searching for pink tanks online is great if you're looking for shirts, but not so great if you want to find actual pink tanks. If you enjoyed this slightly different style of topic, be sure to let me know as well, since I love covering all things tank related, and there are plenty of other topics similar to this I could go into in the future. Thanks as always to my ConelyFans for their support of the channel, and to all of you for watching. If you liked this video, I recommend checking out my previous video on Brazil's tank made out of bread, or whichever of my other videos YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Hope to see you there, or in my next video.